Right. All right, I think we'll start. All right, good morning, I guess. Good afternoon. I'm not sure, depending on where you're calling from. My name is Sandro Tejada. I'm the director of Major Gifts and Family Giving. I'm also a parent, so I'm in your shoes, of a wonderful freshman, Maya Tejada, who's majoring in communication. It took me almost 9 years to recruit her. I'm glad that she's on South Orange campus, and she's doing well. I mean, as you all know, it's peaks and valleys. It's a roller coaster ride that we're taking in this journey as they're in their freshman year. I think that we might have some parents that are parents of sophomores. Um, and I want to thank you for joining this virtual coffee and conversation meeting. We've been hosting these meetings since I've started. They were in person during the summer. Of course, during the pandemic, we pivoted to virtual conversations with our wonderful Division of Student Services and their incredible team. And I'm so grateful that we have Dean Majid Whitney, who I've had the pleasure of working with for the past 10 years. He'll
Wow.
share his yeah, it's almost a decade, Majid. I know you've been here longer, so I'll let you share your story a little bit. Majid is our, I want to make sure I get his title correct, is the Assistant Vice President and Dean of Student Services. And again, he's been at Seton Hall community for the past 15 years. And so I'm glad that he has agreed to share his wisdom, his information about how he promotes student success and also in regards to campus inclusion. So Majid, thank you. The floor is
Great.
yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the invitation, Sandro.
You're
As
welcome.
Sandro mentioned, my name is Majid Whitney. I'm one of the assistant vice presidents and deans in our Division of Student Services. I oversee our subdivision of campus inclusion and community, which houses our access and opportunity programs that are state and federally funded, that provide access to higher education and financial support and academic support services to a large population of first generation students, some that are low income, and oftentimes come from backgrounds where education, there were some disparities in the school systems that they're coming from. I have been at Seton Hall for 15 years in several different capacities, working with Sandro for the last 10 years. I was in another department at that time, which is the Center for Academic Success. It used to be called Freshman Studies. I served as the assistant dean there for some time. I served as a first year advisor that many of your students are connected with, many moons ago. I was the interim dean there, associate dean of our EOF programs once upon a time. And now I also partner with our chief equity diversity officer with a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives across campus. I co-chair our bias education support team with our chief equity and diversity officer, and I also help to train some of our instructors across different schools to help create equitable classroom spaces that are validating of all students. In general, I think I have a working knowledge of a lot of what we do at Seton Hall. Um, uh, Not only was I an advisor, but I also now oversee advising programs and academic support programs. Like Sandro, like all of you, I do have a child that is in college. My recruiting efforts did not work for Seton Hall. He chose to go somewhere else to study engineering. Um, but I have a junior in college. I also have a 10th grader who wants to come to Seton Hall. And I have an 8-year old because, we just really plan things that way to be nice and spread out to keep us youthful for many, many years. But in a nutshell, I do work across divisions on a lot of initiatives. I now co chair one of the Middle States Reaccreditation Committees to ensure that Seton Hall is still a degree granting institution for the next several years. And I get to work with faculty and administration in those capacities. I sit on the Council for Student Success, which is really about advising on a very holistic, broader scale across campus. And I get to work with faculty and administrators on those initiatives. I also partner with athletics on different initiatives related to the student athlete experience. And sometimes I am brought in to uh, run focus groups. Sometimes I'm brought in to mediate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But most importantly, I'm here to help take care of other people's children. And I know that is the most important part of the work that I do, is to really create a campus community that, our students can have a home away from home. And as a parent of a college student, I know how incredibly important it is to know that your child is being taken care of, being accommodated, and their needs are being met. Because it requires us to be vulnerable. It puts us in a very vulnerable space to know that our children are not always with us in the world. The university is also having a hand in raising them. And, we like to know that things are being done in a way that makes our children feel loved and supported. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Sandra, anything that you want me to touch on, please let me know. And I think we can have our coffee and our conversation, and we can go from there on this beautiful Friday.
Yes, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand. You can ask the question in the chat. I have a question,
Please.
Majid. Being here 15 years, you've seen a lot of students, you've met so many of them and have guided them to hopefully become servant leaders once they graduate. But I know with Seton Hall and part of their strategic plan, and one of the things that we hear a lot from Dr. Nair and our university leadership is that we're one university in regards to overseeing campus inclusion and community. What are some of the goals for making it an inclusive community, especially for those that are freshmen, that this is the transition from high school to college is a big step, especially coming from different communities. Some come from larger high
Mhm.
schools, smaller high schools, so this could be a tough transition. But in your division and your role, how do you make that a possibility for them to
I
feel
think,
included?
yeah, thank you. I think that's a great question. I really think that everyone should have the right to feel like their authentic selves, and also develop a high level of empathy. I think so much of advancing equity is really advancing our own understandings of other people and other perspectives, and validating that is exactly what it is. Um, a lot of what I do is to address, parent concerns, student concerns, making sure that people are free from a campus of filled with like bias, discrimination, et cetera, microaggressions. I help conduct monthly anti-racism trainings for the community, and faculty, administrators, alumni, some community members participate in those every third Friday of every month. We've been doing that for almost 2 years now. And this is where we have like really personalized conversations about empathy, about discrimination, about microaggressions, with the hope that we can all become more educated and more aware of these issues, of these challenges, and all have a hand in eradicating that, from our campus and our community. And I think when we do that and we model those behaviors, we set an example for our students to also model those behaviors, not only on campus, but beyond. We have 4 years to work with students to help create a foundation for the careers and the adulthoods that they're going to experience beyond Seton Hall. I am not solely focused on students just transitioning to Seton Hall, and that's great. I want students to transition here, feel comfortable here, feel that they have a strong and know that they have a strong sense of belonging here, and to take that energy and the possibilities of the change that we could create in the world beyond Seton Hall. And I think that we can serve as models in our respective communities. But it also means that I have to respond to every email and every phone call in a timely fashion. I don't want students, I don't want parents, faculty, administration to feel that they have to wait to be heard. I think it's important that people's are heard, their perspectives are heard, but also their concerns are amplified. Other people are aware of these things. So I use our diversity, equity, inclusion committee that works across campus to provide voice to sometimes the voiceless, to make people aware of the challenges that our students in our community are facing, and to really create coalitions of people that are willing to work towards advancing equity in the world, not just Seton Hall. I have this philosophy that if we think globally, um, we can start by acting locally. And if we all have that perspective of really having a hand and just creating spaces where everyone can have a strong sense of belonging, everyone can learn to be open to other perspectives, to validate other people, and I think that will create incredible change. I think one of the main things that takeaways from a college experience is to really understand that you're going to have to work with people from all backgrounds, and ultimately, we want people to work with us. In some cases, they will work for us when we're in like leadership positions. We don't want to find ourselves on islands doing the work with all of our brilliance and none of the humanity, none of the people skills, none of the empathy that really bring us closer together so that we can leverage our collective talents, to have a huge impact in the roles that we play.
Thank you, Majid. I see that Judy Runts shared a comment in regards to her regret not having her daughter live on campus. I imagine as a commuter, and I've heard that they struggle to connect, and so if you could address that, I know you've experienced students that are commuters, and what
Yeah,
is some advice you could provide in regards to students that, I think that's one of the things that we see a lot with first semester is just the connection socially, but especially for those commuters that are not in housing
yeah,
or res life, and yeah,
it
yeah,
presents unique
great question.
challenges.
Yeah,
Yeah,
comment.
thank you for that. Look, as a parent, um, I understand the impact of being able to start, on campus early on to sometimes develop those networks, to develop that sense of belonging on a community. And I think it's more challenging when someone is commuting, every day. However, I think if they are intentional about connecting, spending time on campus, not making it transactional, like they get here, they go to class and they leave. You see that a lot with like our graduate students. And I think that is certainly something that as you mature as a student and as a learner, that can work for you. But I think whether you're on campus or off campus, it is critical, it's vitally important that you utilize the services when you're here. Go to the library, go to the career center, join a club organization. There are events held all day long, from morning, afternoon, evening. I think sometimes there's this perception that everything happens at night, and that just is not the case. I think the university is very intentional of providing kind of like a buffet of things for students to get involved in. Um, and I will also encourage any student to really, really, really take advantage of the opportunity that they have in university life. University life is a class that every student takes their first semester, their first year at Seton Hall. They have an academic advisor or administrator that teaches the course. And that's almost like the how to college, time management, leadership development, um, campus community. They get points or part of their grade is assigned to them like based on attending different events and just increasing their exposure to what the university has to offer. I think there are a myriad of opportunities for students to make those connections, but I understand it can sometimes be difficult to take that first step. But since they're already in that class once a week for 50 minutes, not only do they have that instructor, they also have a peer advisor who is a peer leader on campus that's a sophomore, junior, or senior who is trained to help connect students with these activities, with these opportunities, to sometimes invite them with them to go do something different. I'm a firm believer that most of our talents, especially our students, is hidden. It hasn't been pulled out yet because we haven't been exposed to that environment or that event or whatever it may be to show us that we have an interest that we never considered. We have a talent that we didn't realize might be the very thing that we monetize for 10 years from now. Um, Being on campus, obviously, when you can stay here, is a great experience. But I also think as a commuter, although it's a different experience and it has its own uniqueness to it, it does not prevent you from being able to make meaningful connections on campus. And I can't stress that enough. I hear students say, well, if I was on campus, I could do this. Um, you know, the programs that I oversee, we have the highest retention and graduation rates on campus. The numbers are what they are. I would say half of my students are commuters. It's like 50-50. I can't point to a student on campus in my program versus one off campus and show a major difference in their level of engagement or their level of academic and social success. I think so much of it is about a student being helped to become vulnerable enough to be open to the possibilities. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy because we have students that are coming from a variety of places. Some of them have to catch 2 trains and 3 buses, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to discount that. But I think when you take that into consideration, it's even more important that when you get here, you get the most of what we offer. Because there are students that live on campus that are absolutely disengaged. This is like Hotel Seton Hall. They're at every party. You know, you can usually find them at the gym or somewhere like that. They're not always at class. They're not going to office hours. They're not seeing their professors. I really think it's about us all helping our students to seek out those opportunities and make those connections. I meet with a student today at 3:30. I've I've been trying to get him to make some connections. I met with his mother last week for an hour after she and I met during Parents Weekend. And she said, I don't know what to do. She said, we met together. I know you've reached out to him. This guy has my cell phone number. He's on campus. He's not making those connections. So I say that to say it's not a guarantee that someone on campus is going to connect, but it also doesn't have to be a guarantee that someone off campus doesn't connect. I really think it's about not only us continuing to encourage and provide these touch points, but for that student ultimately to decide that they're going to get out of this experience what they put into it. And it could be life changing, whether they're on campus or off campus. And I'm a firm believer of that. I hope I answered the question. Okay.
Thank you, Majid. And Jennifer, thank you for agreeing to connect your daughter with Judy. I think it takes, as we say, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, I think honestly, at Seton Hall, for all our families to help when help is needed. And I really appreciate that, Jennifer.
Yeah.
If we can make that connection, it helps. As
Yeah.
as as Majid
Yeah.
has mentioned, we have to take ourselves out of our comfort zone to make a difference, and meeting with parents and talking to students. And so thank you again for
And, and
connecting.
Sandra, I'll take that a step further. And students know, any student I interact with, I don't believe in just stepping out of our comfort zones. I believe in expanding our comfort zones. I think that very first part of stepping out is different because we have 18 years of this narrative that told us who we're supposed to be. That does not have to define who we're going to be the next 18 years. And I think fundamentally is a really different mindset. I always talk to students about being open to the possibilities. I was not a great high school student. I was a pretty good college student, but I went into college expecting almost failure because I thought it was going to be like high school, and the college environment aligned more with how I operated as a learner. I found not only a new confidence, but I found new interests. My friend group started to expand and change because I was expanding and changing. And as a father of a junior in college, I've pretty much coached him to do the same thing. Cast a wide net. Don't leave any stone unturned. I had a son that never wanted to go to a museum, and my wife and I, we're into art. We like to travel, we do different things, and he just didn't get it. And then he studied abroad in the spring, goes to Italy. Then he started to visit countries every other weekend because when you're in Europe, it's not that expensive to travel to other parts of Europe. And a month later, he's sending me pictures of paintings from like famous museums. Like, Dad, you won't believe what I just learned. And to think that his first 18 years, you never would have thought it. Now he's like starting to be an adult, and he's introducing me to things. He's introducing me to restaurants and experiences. And it's a beautiful thing. But what's most beautiful about it is to see him go through this change without even realizing that he's going through this change. He opened himself up to this experience, and now he's on this journey to really explore who he can be, not just be defined by who he was.
Thank you, Majid. I know there's a raised hand, Johanny Rabadi, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My question is, and it's more of a comment. My son is a freshman. He is in the School of Diplomacy. Um, One of the challenges that so far I have seen, he's a commuter, and it was his choice. And typically, there's two things that I think is happening right now. Adapting to the student life and being part of the student life. He's actually the freshman senator. He's on SDA, and he's doing his best to participate and to be part of the community. But one of the things that I see is the fact that there are many clubs. So, I mean, a lot of options for them to participate, be part of the student life. However, it's a challenge for a commuter when most of the meetings happen late at night, especially here in New Jersey, the weather change, rain, right now going through winter, we don't know how it's going to be. For the student who is a commuter who has to be there for all his classes and then have to stay for a late club meeting that is mandatory and in person. I think that the pandemic, one of the things that changed for the better is the fact that we can communicate virtually, that we can have virtual meetings like we have right now. So I don't know why it's not possible for most of the clubs to give the commuters the opportunity to join those meetings through Teams or Zoom, whatever means they use for that. And I think it's super important because a lot of the students, when they're commuter, based on the feedback that I'm getting from him, do not participate on those clubs because of the timing when the meetings occur. That's one observation. The other one is from a parent coming from a freshman, the his registration, for instance, was one of the late ones. So he has classes that there is a gap of 3 hours. That's a lot for a student that is a commuter that doesn't have the opportunity to go to a room to rest or study or whatever, the comfort of their home. Um, so I think that that's also should be looked at for the new freshman classes that are coming. The registrations perhaps should be even for everybody, so everybody have the opportunity to have classes that better accommodate their schedule. And the other thing that he's trying to work into changing is to have a special lounge, special section for the commuters. Because I can give you an example. Last Friday, he had an event back to back. Where he has to wear business attire. So, and he has classes at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's not, I won't say feasible, but it's actually difficult when you're wearing a business attire a whole day, walking from class to class. And then you have to stay for two meetings after school where you have to, that is a requirement. So I think that perhaps what he had to do on that day, he had a meeting with the board and the student, the SGA, he had to go into the bathroom to change and go to his car to get his suit. It was pouring rain on that day. So I think it's not that difficult to kind of listen to what the student have to say to accommodate those things that we as adults have been through it and maybe perhaps facilitating a better life for them. I think it's probably, a little more appropriate.
No, I appreciate your comments, and I took notes, and I will certainly forward some of this along. I will address some of them, but also I understand your concerns about the registration. I think for commuters, we do have a kind of commuter lounge where students can spend time, and that's still set up in a university center. Even while it's undergoing renovations, there is still a space. I was at a recent SGA meeting, and there were some comments from a commuter, first year student, said there's no space and we don't go anywhere. And there is, in fact, a space. That space has never gone anywhere. So there is an opportunity for that when students have time in between classes. Additionally, the library is open, several hours. We have study spaces all over campus in different buildings. We have cafes in different buildings. So I think there are opportunities. Is it perfect? No, but even our students on campus, they want 24-hour wraparound service, and that's difficult to provide as well. So I think there's always going to be some challenge. I think the goal is to create a space that is accommodating of all students, but I think we continue to be a work in progress. So I absolutely get that. Regarding the clubs and organizations, being available via Teams, I'm going to speak to one of the associate vice presidents who oversees that area. I do advise an organization. I will tell you that every meeting is in person and on Teams. So I think there may be some practices where people may not be providing it online, and I'm going to see what can be done about that, or at least there can be, some investigation into that. But I have meetings with my org the third Monday, I think, of the first Monday of every month. And it's certainly sometimes I'm there in person. Most of the time I join via Teams. I have children I have to drop off and pickups from uh, school and practice and everything else. Um, and they accommodate that because they recognize that some students are commuters that can't necessarily be here at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. And regarding spaces for people to change their attire, we do have facilities in the gym. I'm thinking of I forget the Walsh Gymnasium, where we do have the locker rooms and those kinds of things where students can change if they need to. Is there an empty space or empty dorms on campus to accommodate students? I think we're pretty much maxed out in those spaces, which it shows how important it is for some students to really be on campus. But I know that's not a perfect solution. But I will certainly pass that along as well. And I'm also happy to answer any questions anyone has around that.
I appreciate your feedback. However, one of the things that he has said, like for instance, he said that it's a student lounge where they can gather, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't know that. So I think that perhaps this, the student life class that they're taking, I don't know if that's the actual name for the class, maybe they should integrate that. Maybe through Teams, they can send a message to the freshmen. Did you know? Kind of something like that, that we have this, that, and that, and that, and that, because even during orientation, he said to me that none of that was actually addressed. So they
Okay.
should be maybe a did you know or something like that for the commuters, so they know that there are many things that perhaps they don't know. That I mean, I may be leaving on all those things. Just an observation.
No, I appreciate it. And I would say sometimes we can certainly do a better job of communicating that information. Um, but I was at a recent student government meeting where, someone, a representative, said that this space didn't exist, and it was explicitly, laid out as well. I think sometimes the information may be there and maybe there's some difficulty accessing the information, but I think what you just said about even at orientation, I just wrote like a how-to kind of college for commuter students, I think would actually be something beneficial.
Exactly. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're more
And
than welcome.
yeah, Johanny, thank you so much for sharing your concerns. We actually have and I shared the link in regards to commuter students. So it kind of shares some really good information for commuters to see where spaces to study, where to eat. So there is a specific page on our website that talks to commuter students, right? If it's about parking information, if they want to take the shoe fly, so there's a lot of good information there that you can share with your student as well. But so yeah, so definitely share that with your student when you get a chance.
And I just want to stress that it's really important that we have these kinds of conversations so that we can hear this and I can, move this information along to the respective people. We have weekly meetings where these are the very things that come up. I think we all have some blind spots, and oftentimes, we're in the day-to-day work and we don't know what we don't know. So it's very important that we do have parents like yourself that give us this feedback so we can ensure that people do know.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Majid, I mean, you mentioned, which is a great accomplishment on your team in regards to retention rates that are higher within the groups that you focus on. And I know that was a major concern with Dr. Nair and his university address to all of us. So what is it that you've been doing specifically to maintain this amazing retention rate and graduation rates? What is that you're doing specifically to make sure that students are staying at CNO and graduating as well? I'd just love to hear your
Yeah, great. Well, I think there are several factors. I think first and foremost, we will start with finances. Uh, College education is expensive. And I think that anytime someone is not able to meet the financial cost of college, that in essence is going to make it difficult to be in college, right? So before I even talk about the services and the programs, I think that's first and foremost. A lot of students across the country um, have challenges paying for college. The rate, college cost goes up about twice the rate of inflation on average. And this is everywhere. This is not a Seton Hall thing. It was like that when I was in school, before I had all this gray and silver hair. It's what we experience with my son right now. Um, that's one of those things that I think is always difficult to kind of plan for, right? So let's assume that finances are not a major concern, meaning that financial aid, scholarships, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just assume for the sake of this discussion that we take the financial piece out of it. I think what keeps students graduating, statistically, it's proven, students make academic and social connections. Sometimes it's stronger one, sometimes it's stronger the other. But students that are really, Sandra, you mentioned earlier that your daughter was into theater and you would like to see her do that. I met my wife in college. My wife was into theater when I met her. Um, I would argue I was a better student. Don't tell her that, but I think I was a better student in class. Like I was really focused, like going to class. Like I didn't miss class. I was really able to organize my time. She was in a play every semester. That gave her life. It was something that she was passionate about. It was so important to her that she overcame other obstacles to still have an opportunity to do something that was so meaningful to her that nurtured her core. She made a connection into something that fueled her passion for life. And I think it helped her progress. I think when we have a big enough why, we can figure out how. Sometimes that why is I want to develop as this leader and I want to lead community service initiatives and make more people pay things forward to impact the lives of other people. Seton Hall may be a vessel to do that. Student may not love going to class every day. They may not love taking exams and papers, but they are so passionate about this thing that they will persevere in those things that they may not, perfectly align with because they know what their purpose is in that space. Some people want to become nuclear physicists, so they are paying really close attention in their physics classes, in their math classes, and they understand it's vitally important that they have the strong academic foundation to work for NASA. They get that. They may not be in every club, every organization. They may not go to the gym often, but it's so vitally important to them that they're able to have an opportunity to do research, to learn from these scholars and these professors, that gives them that purpose. What I try to do in my programs is to connect students to campus and help them figure out who they are and what's going to make their 4 years the best possible 4 years of their lives. I think college can be the best 4 years of someone's life. I wholeheartedly believe that. This is not me trying to sell Seton Hall or anything like that. This is me believing that in that space where I have some independence to really explore who I am, it can be so transformational um, that oftentimes you will not have an experience like that. You get to interact with people from all over the world, hear perspectives from all walks of life, question why, and explore the answers. And that in itself can give someone that motivation to come back semester after semester after semester. Um, Academically, every student here is intelligent. They would not have been accepted here if they were not. They had everyone on this call's child was successful for all of their years in school. Even if school didn't become was easy for them, they were successful. They have the intelligence to do it. If someone has a hiccup along the way and maybe something is challenging, I think we have unmatched academic support services. Like you can get help. But just because someone offers help doesn't mean that people want to receive help. You could say go to tutoring, but I never tell a student to go to tutoring first. when they say they're having trouble in the class. And I know, what do you mean? My wife does that. She'll tell my son, well, just go to tutoring. I'm like, no, 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 no. I need to know how much time he spent on it first. Did he actually read the book? Did he actually go to class? Because now if he did all those things, he can then go to tutoring and say, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? If I never went to class and I never paid attention and never did, I go there with the book and say, I don't get it. And I just drop it. That tutor can't help you. I say all that to say the services are here to support the students, whether it's disability support services, whether it's counseling and psychological services, whether it's our academic resource center, whether it's recitation for those introductory courses in biology or supplemental instruction for anatomy and physiology for our nursing majors. The resources are here. The goal, I think, for students should really be like developing a confidence in their competence, like them knowing that they can do this, even if it's a challenge, but to be proactive, to kind of take advantage of those resources that are kind of being laid out, those opportunities that are being laid out. Seton Hall is known nationally as having like really strong school spirit. I mean, there's a lot of pirate pride here. There are some students that live for the basketball season. They want to have their faces painted in blue and be on national TV. They figure out ways to get through other things because that moment is so important to them. And I think it's really about students becoming more aware of who they are, who they aren't, and determining what they're willing to expose themselves to see what the possibilities are. So when students make those connections academically, or they make those connections socially, or they make those connections spiritually, we're a Catholic institution, I think that will add meaning to their experience, and it becomes something that they want to be a part of their lives for those 4 years, and sometimes longer when they come here for graduate school, or they end up sending their children here. Sandro, did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm learning so much. That's awesome. Definitely the statement confidence in their competence is so important. Just getting
That's
get a
an
better
original. You know, you
that I
gotta give me
like
credit
that.
if you use that.
Trademark
No, but
that.
I
Yeah.
believe that thing.
Yeah.
So many people are unsure.
Right.
You know, and I think it's really easy to go from knowing that you could do school, you come in this new environment, and now all of a sudden we think about everything that could go wrong. I think when we start to eliminate that feeling and we have that belief that even if it's a challenge, we have multiple frames of reference where we've overcome challenges,
Mm-hmm.
our ability to overcome becomes the habit. When we think that everything is going to lead to failure, then we develop a habit of not seeing success. And we have to remind students that they've been successful for all these years up to this point. This is just a different environment. You have to make some adjustments. In my 15 years at Seton Hall, I've never told a student or a parent that college is more difficult than high school. I don't believe that it is. I think college is different than high school. Is it challenging? Sure. But our freshmen in high school could not do senior level work their freshman year. Like they had to take algebra and geometry before they could progress to pre-calculus and trigonometry and all these other things. This is no different. It's about building the strong foundation early on and creating this beautiful academic home on top of that foundation. And I think when we develop those foundational skills, you develop a confidence that we will weather storms. Um, and I really believe in that. You know, I saw it with my son. You know, he would go to this semester. He was like, "Oh, Dad, I have these classes that all of the upperclassmen saying everybody struggles in," and I was like, "Yeah, okay." He's like, "You don't seem like you care." I said, "I know who you are. You have to stop listening to other people and allowing them to pass on their trauma and their insecurities to you. You haven't had those challenges that they've had. You regiment yourself. You go to class every day. You take advantage of office hours. You have a system that works. You have to make tweaks. You're listening to people that never made tweaks and they chose to be challenged all the time. And I have a great colleague in psychology who said this thing to me a few years ago, and it's just stayed with me. She was like, "Look, Majid, they can pay for it now, or they could pay for it later. You know, if you put that work in now, you build that foundation now, it's really maintenance. You're just painting that house. You're just fixing things along the way, but you don't have to replace everything, you know, and like you become a better student. You become a better learner. You know, you can go from undergrad to graduate school, law school, or right into your profession with a different confidence in yourself. I just got back in the country last night. I was visiting a medical school in the Caribbean and saw two of my students that 5 years ago didn't think they could pass intro to bio. And they're in medical school, thriving. And the conversations were like, I'm so glad I listened to you when you told me I didn't know how great I could actually be. It's like we can't look at everything as being insurmountable. We have to look at things that they are possible. And when we overcome it, we don't question that everything, we don't think that everything's going to be impossible because now we know what we've done. We've accomplished something that we didn't think we could do. And eventually we give ourselves the grace to say, you know what? When I put forth the right effort, I usually create a great result. Um, and that's something I just wholeheartedly believe. Away from my position at Seton Hall, that's what I believe as a human being. It's certainly what I believe as a parent. Like we all know how bright our children are. Sometimes they don't see it. And it's about them seeing what we have seen all of their lives.
Thank you, Majid. Um, Parents, please, if you have any questions for Majid, please raise your hand or share it in the chat. This is a conversation that we want to have with you and an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have. I have a question for parents. Has any of your students shared any example of them connecting with their faculty, like having office hours, or if they're struggling, asking for help from their faculty or professors? And if anyone has, please share. Because I know I'm experiencing that with my daughter in the sense of guiding her and saying, hey, this your professor is here to help you. And if you don't ask for their help, they just don't know, so it's not high school. So again, I would just love to hear any anecdotes or any stories that parents have experienced with their own students. Mark, yeah, please unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
thanks so much. Yeah, so my son Tom, sort of during his, excuse me, junior year, he'd always been a great student, but like so many other people, he had a lot of trouble during COVID, and and that led to he was always a shy sort of person generally, and that led to real problems with his grades and a lot of anxiety, and he always had some anxiety. So actually, very recently, as he starts to get used to things, he had a bit of a panic attack, and he was able to reach out to his professors after he actually, spoke to people at the crisis center and did the things that he really should do, which wasn't easy for him, and it caused him to miss some assignments and miss a couple classes. He's reached out to all of them, and across the board, they've really been great and supportive. So that was, really meant a lot to me and my wife, and to him, and hopefully he's getting back on track.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's just heartening to hear that he advocated, for himself. And I think that's a testament to you and your wife, that he saw a challenge and he did not want to be defined by that challenge. He knew that that wasn't how he wanted to feel. And I think that in itself is having the confidence moving forward to know that help is there, how you can take advantage of it, recognizing when things get too difficult to manage, which happens to all of us sometime. And being able to take those steps. And I know as a parent requires, we worry a lot and it makes us feel really, really uncomfortable at times because they don't realize they're still our babies. It doesn't matter how old they get, they just are. But I think that's it says a lot about him, because the transition is not the easiest thing. I think persisting is not the easiest thing, as these challenges don't stop. They don't wait for us. But I'm also glad to hear that the university was really supportive. So I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, I was really proud of him, and the thing is that precisely that sort of issue that somebody has is the thing that's going to keep them from doing what he needed to do and kind of raise his hand. And then if you have even one person who reacts negatively, then they learn a lesson not to raise their hand again, right? So
Great point.
that's why on both parts, just was really happy.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think Majid, I know one of the things that I've experienced in the 10 years, especially, and you could probably share, and as Mark mentioned, the pandemic has been a game changer in the sense of how students, I mean, their experience as when if they were in high school or even current when they were in college, that it made it changed their outlook on life and how they deal with things. I don't know for your in your perspective, in your experience working with students, have you seen a change in students in regards to how they experience life as a college student, especially this class of students, this incoming class of 2026 who had this disruption while they were in high school and now having to adjust to college. I don't know if there's any anecdotes that you've experienced, or maybe
Well,
not. Yeah.
No, I would say in short, yes. I believe that we all experience a level of trauma from it. I think some of us are a bit more seasoned. So us having to pivot and change the way we do things, we may have been a little savvier doing it, just from the nature of our lives. Sometimes our work lives are just balancing a lot of things. I think for students, it was even more impactful because they had to switch to a mode of operating that they were never taught how to do. For me, it was like, oh, I'll just be home for 2 weeks and that'll be the case. I wasn't prepared to be able to do this on a high level. I still don't know if I'm doing it on a high level. I know I'm trying my best every day, right? But I think students are adaptable. I think they went through this period where they realized that this was like the new normal and they had to adjust. And now we're seeing them kind of readjust, to now we're back in person. I think social skills were compromised in some regards because everything became like electronic, social media. People now have a billion friends, people they've never met before, and they're getting advice from complete strangers, which is not always the best practice. But I do have my own kind of spin on things. I don't think it's about unlearning and now learning something new again. I think we all developed a new competency. Like this is here to stay. What happened in that during that turbulent time where students were then forced to kind of change their paradigm is they developed a new skill set that I think that they can leverage not only academically but professionally. And I think it's about using this new environment to really refine those skill sets. Having access to information, having access to people in a much wider way. Is it my preferred means to speak? I'd much rather see you all in person, and we can have coffee in person and we can have conversations and we could read the nonverbals, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think that it says something about our ability to be able to adjust to both environments. I left an in-person meeting to come to this meeting, and I will do some combination of the two for the rest of the day. I think looking at things from a mindset of kind of being solution driven and opportunity driven, as opposed to like a deficit model of what we're not getting. I think it's the way we present it and the way our students in particular receive it. You know, I think when they look at it as something that they can leverage and we can help teach them strategies of how to really take full advantage of the environment, whatever it is. I think one of the main things that allow people to be successful beyond college or as older adults is our ability to kind of adapt to different environments. We can reach broader populations. We can learn information from a variety of people. We can create mentoring opportunities. Like a Seton Hall student can now be mentored by someone in California, and they can have weekly check-ins. I was able to meet with a parent via Zoom who's in California last week after meeting her in person. Like we developed a level of trust at that in-person meeting, and then we were able to speak like old friends last week. It really doesn't matter whether we're in person or not. I know how much she cares about her son. She knows how much I care about him. And now we could just have these kind of casual conversations because of like this new environment that I was forced to adjust to. We had a parent say it would be great if we offered clubs and organization meetings at night via Teams. we may not have had that conversation 4 or 5 years ago. That student would have been a commuter and just missed out, right? So I think that there are certain opportunities there, and for students to see how their impact can really be expanded, in on all means, because I think that just going back to in person, I think that's a thing of the past.
Thank you, Majid. We're at 5 more minutes into our meeting. Please, parents, if you have any questions or concerns or comments, feel free to share with us. Um, I just want to just remind parents that we do have one more session of our parent virtual coffee and conversation next Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. same time with Dean Karen Van Norman about wellness and support. So I highly recommend, if you haven't registered for it, please do so. It's our last meeting with the wonderful team of student services. And we've also recorded the two previous coffee and conversation sessions with Dr. Vaughn Calhoun and Sergio Oliva, and also Winston Roberts. If you didn't attend those, we have it on the YouTube video. So you can, I highly recommend. They were wonderful sessions. So great information. And as I tell parents, the more informed you are, the better you are to help your students be successful at Seton Hall. As Majid and I were talking about, at this point, we're coaches, right? We're just providing advice to our students. Hopefully they're listening and taking that in, and taking wonderful actions to make sure that they take advantage of every resource that's available at any institution that they're at. So again, any questions that you might have, if you don't want to share it here, feel free to email us afterwards. We can address those concerns and questions. Also, if you don't know, please, if you're in the area, we have our Christmas tree lighting ceremony on Monday, November 28th. If you've never been to it, and maybe none of you have, highly recommend it. It's a wonderful event that you can come and share with your student and the Seton Hall community. It's also, we're excited, as Majid was talking about, the University Center, which is total renovated. We'll have a soft opening and ribbon cutting ceremony that same day. I don't know if it's open to everyone, but know that that University Center will be open to your students 24/7. So for commuters, it's going to be an amazing space, a game changer. And I imagine, Majid, you'll be moving back into the University Center, hopefully.
I can't wait. I've been in this
Yeah.
temporary office for far too long. I'm actually going to do a walkthrough later today to just make sure that, the spaces that are assigned to me are, everything is in order, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so again, Majid, thank you so much for providing your wonderful insight and advice. I think we learned a lot today about how students can be very successful. Definitely thank you again. I don't know if you have some final words you want to share before we sign off on
Hello.
this. Yep, go ahead. I'm sorry. You have a
Hello.
question?
Sure.
Hi, yes, I have my
Yeah,
hand
sorry.
raised.
Oh, my apologies, Crystal.
Good morning,
Good
folks.
morning.
I'm
Morning.
sorry I'm on set now. I was on verbally on the telephone, and now I'm able to get on my cell phone. I had some kind
Wonderful.
of miscommunication issues. My question is, as I said, I missed the majority of the meeting. It's regarding financial aid. I had a situation with financial aid. My son received scholarships or whatever. We took out a loan for my son to pay the balance of his tuition. I did that. I was informed that he has subsidized and unsubsidized loans. I called 3 weeks ago, and the lady told me that you have to go online and you have to approve the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Just last week, I received a notice stating that his tuition was not completely paid for, and if he did not pay it by the 9th, upwards of $125, I think they'll be penalized for being late. I called on yesterday, I believe, or 2 days ago, and finally someone told me that you had to complete the entrance counseling in order for the loans to be processed or whatever the case may be. Um, had I not called and found out that information, my son would not have been able to register on time, which is not fair to my child. When inquiring about why he had an outstanding balance, when I got the amount of the loan that was needed to complete his tuition, um, I was taken back with that. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, and I received another notice today saying I have an outstanding balance of whatever. Now, as I stated before, had the person that I spoke to previously informed me that there was processes, that there was steps that had to be taken, then this would not have happened to him. He's a student that was a late entrant. He actually supposed to start in spring, but I received a notice saying he was eligible to come for fall semester. So of course, by him coming so late, he had to get the last picking of choices for classes. So now with this situation happening now, he would be in the same situation again to deal with the last picking of the classes had his tuition situation not been fulfilled. I feel that you guys need to let your financial aid department know that there are certain procedures or process that need to be taken if a parent inquire about something, to inform them the full complete process. If you're unaware of the circumstances or situation, you have a lot of parents who are the first time students, who their students are the first time students coming into college. So everything is, which way did he go? I don't know. So I'm looking for advice. And if I come to you and I ask you, so what is the process or what do I have to do? And I'm not getting the correct information, then I'm lost. And that's not fair to me as a consumer. You understand? We all
Yeah.
know that this is a great school. I'm so ecstatic that my son was accepted, as you stated, I believe, Mr. Whitney. Yes, that's a great accomplishment. But I'm saying, for such prestigious school, for me to be going all around the world and come back again, this should be something that I should not be dealing with. So I'm just asking that you try to put something into play, that, if a parent call inquiring about something, that he or she is giving the full process of how it's supposed to be taken into consideration, versus leaving them in limbo and have to deal with these emails that are like, what do you mean? I did this already. I can't believe this. And my son is in class like, Mom, they're telling me, Mom, what do I do? Do I have to call somebody? That's an additional distraction for him. School, as you stated, it's not easy. You understand? So to be trying to focus on your education and, wow, what about my schooling? I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to school next semester. That's a lot. It's too much for me. So for it to come on my son, that's an additional issue for him. And yes, he have a little anxiety as well. So that just heightens his anxiety, which we don't need that and or want that. So I'm just bringing that to your forefront.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry that was the experience. And I'm certainly going to pass that note along to our financial aid office. I don't work for them, but I do know some individuals over there. Um, but I'm going to let them know that this was brought up during our conversation. So I do appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you kindly. As I stated, I didn't know what this was mainly about because I missed the interest of the conversation, but I just felt to put that out there because I don't know if there's anyone else that have experienced the same as myself and just never spoke about it. So I hope I'm being that advocate for those that may have experienced.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And I
You're
have
welcome.
also inquired as well. I know I received an email from you. So I've put 2 inquiries into the financial aid office, also the registrar office. Hope to get an answer for you pretty quickly, so we can rectify this issue. And I know I met your son, Christopher, with your sister, Shari, who I actually went to school with. So there's a connection there. And so we hope to rectify this issue for your son, who's a wonderful young man. So
Thank you kindly.
thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Majid, for your wonderful insight, and we look forward to seeing everyone on campus, hopefully for the Christmas tree lighting next week with Karen Van Norman. Hopefully, we'll see some of you tomorrow as we go play St. Peter's at Prudential Center on noon. We also have a pep rally before it, so if you are attending the game, feel free to come and join us at the pep rally. So it's again, it's part of our wonderful tradition at Seton Hall. So thank you again. Go Pirates, and everyone have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And if Sandro,
you.
if
Thank
anyone
you.
has questions or
Bye-bye.
needs to get in touch with me, please share my information.
Wonderful. Sure as well.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be safe.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.